In 2019, I began to film interviews for a new series titled Surrendered. These stories hold a special place in my heart because the first mother that I gave voice to was my own. When she first shared with me about losing her baby to adoption when she was 16 years old, I understood her more, and I felt her pain, her loss, and her grief. And it was coupled with my own as well as an adoptee. She told me after she had several miscarriages that she wanted to adopt because she hoped to be the adoptive mother that the son she lost had. And I am eternally grateful that she was brave enough to share her story with me back in 2013 for the world to see. And I believe it has helped other mothers come forward to share their truth as well. On this journey of helping others tell their stories, I've met so many people who didn't have a voice and felt silenced. I learned that not all families had that open dialogue. The inability to grieve out loud with others has long-lasting effects. And this is why I do what I do, because I know what it means to connect with someone that has been in your shoes, per se, and how powerful and profound that is. I am proud to share the first interview in this new series, Surrendered, and I hope that if you are moved by these stories that you will click like on the video, comment, and share with your friends, family, and community. You never know who this might help. And please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's the best way to support my passion work.
My name is Linda. I am a retired federal employee, worked for the government for 35 years. I have 3 children, 6 grandchildren. I was 18, I just turned 18 when I lost my son to adoption, and he was born in 1971 at the Florence Crittenden home. My dad always wanted boys. He had 2 girls. So my sister was actually more of a tomboy, so she was kind of his girl, I guess. But being the oldest, he was more pushy on me towards academics. I was much more leaning that way than my sister was, so that was his big thing. And we lived a quiet little life, just the 4 of us, you know, and outside Washington, D.C. He worked for the FBI, and Mom, at times, I can remember in high school she worked a part-time job, but really didn't work. She was pretty much home with us all the time, so very quiet. My mother had been in an orphanage. Her parents died when she was like 11 and 12. So the kids, there were like 6 of them. They went to live with a family member, and then I don't know what happened, but they ended up in an orphanage. At least Mom did. And one of the ladies that worked there was kind of Mom's chaperone kind of thing, you know. And when she graduated high school, her plan was to move to Washington, D.C. They were in West Virginia. So this woman quit her job and came with her. So she was like a grandmother to me. And she almost raised me. I mean, I was with her every weekend, all weekend. They would take me over on Friday night, and she and I would go scouting around DC and stuff, and they'd pick me up Sunday when she'd cook Sunday dinner. And you know, it was just like, And so every adventure with her was great. You know, she just did everything. My mother was not the type to get up and go do anything. So this woman raised me, and she was totally responsible for I think my attitude, everything, because my sister is more like my mom and my dad, and I am more like her. And so I do think it had a lot to do with that. My mom had been somewhat of an alcoholic when I was growing up, but she would never admit it, but I can recall many times standing up to her and storming out and then being very upset because I realized she didn't have a mother to guide her. You know, she was in an orphanage, so I would feel bad thinking, oh, maybe she didn't know how to handle that. Maybe she didn't know, you know, what to do. But a lot of times that happened more if she was drinking than if she wasn't. But she was harder to get along with then. I mean, every time I'd go by the kitchen and find a glass of alcohol, I'd just pour it out. You know, I didn't know what else to do. We didn't know what else to do in those days. It was kept so silent and in the dark. I, you know, didn't know that much about it other than the fact that you could smell it. You know, you could smell it in the glass, so I just dump it out. Figured if nothing else, that's one glass you're not going to get. And then one day she wasn't doing it anymore. Had a couple of issues in high school of, I guess it was just sexual abuse, you know, not family related, but I, you know, on a city bus once, and I dozed off and I woke up and a guy had his hand up my skirt, things like that. My driver's ed teacher had asked me to babysit for him over the summer, probably between junior and senior year. So I was probably 16. Because that's when I took driver's ed. And I was just thrilled, thinking that was really cool if he thought that much of me. But before they left, he got me down in the basement because he wanted to show me something. And he was all over me. So that was really a horrible day because I still stayed there and watched those kids when they went. I didn't know what to do. And called everybody I knew, my friends. I didn't call my parents, but I called my friends. My friends were absolutely horrified when they found out about the touching and stuff that he did. You know, I don't even know how far he would have taken it. I just managed to get away from him and go back upstairs. And I was embarrassed, but also afraid. And I should have, maybe now, knowing I probably would have said something to his wife, who was standing upstairs and had no clue. But it was very upsetting. I think I finally told my mother. I don't really remember if I did or not. But he was not teaching the next year, so that word must have gotten out somehow, or maybe he stepped over that line with other people. He was very comfortable with it, as far as he knew exactly how he was, you know, what he was doing, so it wasn't an accident, you know. I was a freshman at college, East Carolina University. So I started suspecting something in September. I don't remember when I was late. I don't remember when I got it confirmed. That's when you told the doctor that the guy was in the military and he was in Vietnam. Because there was, you know, he didn't have a husband there, so that's what you told them. So that, because it was not welcome, really. I mean, it was an unusual occurrence. It happened, but it seemed like it didn't happen that much. You know, or maybe it did, I don't know. But I can remember telling the doctor's office that. And I was dating a guy that was in the Air Force at the time. So he had been to visit me a little bit at school, and we discussed it. And although he didn't really want to, he had agreed that we would get married so we could keep the baby, because I knew that Mom and Dad were not going to go along with that. But I kept it to myself. I didn't tell anybody until December. First part of December, I wrote a letter to my parents telling them, because this is not a subject I was looking forward to having with them. And I did not think about Christmas mail. At the time, there wasn't any email. And it got tied up in the mail somewhere, because they got it the day that I got there on Christmas break. So I come bouncing in the house, expecting them to be a little upset, but have already been used to the idea. Mom was standing at I'll never forget it, standing at the kitchen sink crying with it in her hand, the letter in her hand, and she had just read it. Dad didn't know because he was the big grocery shopper, so he had gone to the store to get stuff for my visit and stuff, and he called to check on to see if I was there yet, and she told him over the phone. Mom was that way. So anyway, here he comes running in the house a little while later. He was crying. That's the first time and the only time I think I've ever seen him cry. No, I've seen him since then. But it was just a horrible scene. It couldn't have been worse. My sister didn't know, of course, and when I told her, she was like, "Oh, cool, that's neat." And she was 14, I was 17, so. I got back to school after that and planning to finish out the semester, which ended in March, and I was not ashamed of it at all. I was very proud of it. And when I came home, Dad picked me up in March and picked up all my stuff and brought me home. And then the guy that I was dating, still on board, still planning to marry me. That was the only way I knew of that they would probably let me keep the baby. About a week or two after that, he and his brother went out in DC and rented rafts or something. They were shooting the rapids of a place called Great Falls. Very rocky and I was waiting at the end because I wasn't gonna do that. I don't do things like that. And they never showed up. The next thing I kind of remember clearly was sitting at home on the couch watching the nightly news at 11 o'clock, and they announced this accident at Great Falls and that one man was missing. And it was like, oh my God, I just went numb. I can remember going numb. And the next morning I went to bed, didn't say anything, and I grabbed the newspaper first thing and looked for the article. And I believe it said that he had died in it. And shortly thereafter I got a phone call from his sister. She knew. He had told her about the baby, and she was offering to take it and raise it. I had not agreed to that. I was still numb. I didn't know what to do now. There goes everything I'd planned. And his dad was a Baptist minister, so I wasn't thinking this would go over too well. Well, I don't know, I can remember collapsing when I got the phone call and knowing that, okay, everything has changed now. Because I had told them that we were gonna get married, blah, blah, keep the baby, and then no. They tried to call this doctor and he would not touch me. So probably within a day, my parents had me packed up and in the car, and Dad was driving me to New Jersey. The older woman who came with Mom, she had a sister who lived in Trenton, owned a restaurant. She agreed. She said, let her come up here and live. That's fine with me. And so she said, I have an apartment upstairs. She can stay there. And then they made arrangements for me to go to the maternity home. Because I was too soon to go, but they didn't want me out and let the neighbors see me, so I had to be taken away fast because I was starting to show. And it was almost overnight. Dad was driving me up there and dropped me off in New Jersey at her house. They had already made those plans. There was, I was in the car. There was probably tire marks in the driveway. They got me out of there so fast. And because up till that point, except for Dad being a little touchy, my mother we were making clothes. She was talking about different things and stuff like that. So it wasn't like she was being against it. She didn't act against it. She actually acted like she was interested. And I'm thinking, well, that's your first grandchild. You should be, but they didn't look at it that way at all. And I never told them who the dad was. They never knew. That day that I went down to the floor after the sister told me on the phone, they don't know why that happened. They don't know who that was I talked to. I didn't tell them. And they have for years asked me off and on who he was, but I've never told them. Maybe they didn't realize I was still seeing him. They didn't. He was a little bit older than me. He was like 24, 25, and I was 16, so they probably didn't like that either. The anger really got worse when they started insisting that I couldn't come home if I kept him. And there was no discussion. That was it. Here's this line drawn in the sand, and normally I would have stepped over it. I sometimes wonder why I didn't challenge it more, because that was always my nature, to challenge things like that, but I didn't. Maybe I just somehow agreed with them a little bit, I don't know. I certainly never wanted to do that. It was never my intention. Once when I was in the Florence Crittenden home, bunch of us went down there she took us to lunch in her big yellow Cadillac convertible, and there's like 6 pregnant girls in this car. She didn't care. She just said, come on, let's go have lunch, I'll buy, And that was okay with her. It wasn't an issue with that side of my family. My side which I still call them family, they weren't related, but it was like family. So that's what happened. And I went up there and stayed with Aunt Mary until May. I think the middle of May was when I could go to the Florence Crittenden home in Trenton. And she took me over there. Maybe my dad came up and took me. I don't remember. I remember him saying, I can't see you here. They never came to visit because he couldn't see me. He couldn't stand to see me there or be pregnant or anything like that. So that's where I went, and to be perfectly honest, I didn't mind it so much. It was kind of better than what I was going to have to put up with at home. Because I have a feeling it was just going to be, if he couldn't even see me pregnant, that they couldn't come to visit, that really hurt. Then I'm glad that I wasn't at home, because that would have just been a daily thing. Would have been awful. So at least there I could sit back and relax. I have good memories of the home, actually. Everybody had chores. They sometimes we'd mix them up. That one week you'd be doing kitchen dishes, and one week you'd be doing the floors or wiping the stairs down or something. I guess a lot of the chores depended on how close you were to delivering. We were allowed to go out. We could walk down to the store, or sometimes they had a van. They would take a busload of us over to the yarn shop, because we all learned to crochet and knit while we were in there. When I first got to the home, the clothes were the same, if I recall. I don't recall us wearing anything different. They did give everyone a wedding band, and we were not supposed to know each other's last names. I don't recall. I don't think we changed the first name, but we weren't supposed to. But we did. When you were friends, you knew, I made some friends that I probably would still have if I knew how to get a hold of them. That's a traumatic time, and we stuck together pretty well. The older girls, I was in one of the older groups, because there was a group that was like 12 and 13, so. There was a house mother. I'm sure we saw a social worker, but I do not remember her at all. The house mother she lived there. She was part of everything. I think she was pretty kind. We'd sit around the table sometimes and play canasta, and she'd play with us, things like that. She could be a little stern when there were things she wanted to get done as far as cleaning or whatever. But I don't recall her being particularly bad. She was okay. It would be a tough job to have. I wouldn't want it. I can recall the doctor coming once a week and listening with a stethoscope to your belly. And so when he couldn't come, we'd get it out and do each other's bellies. That was kind of fun. He didn't do anything but just listen to your belly and measure. That back then they went by that, the measurement as to when you were due. And we were kind of lined up as far as who was next and who was next and who was this far along. And I was having a very large baby, and my baby was the same size as my friend who was having twins. So they were watching me because of that. I always had big babies. My 2 daughters are both pretty good size too. But He was okay, but he didn't really have much interaction with us. Like I said, other than that, I never really had any problems, so he didn't have to come and address any of that with us. The woman that was like a grandmother to me, and I called her Aunt Vaughn, she would call me, and her sister that I stayed with would also call me, or she'd come over because she still lived, right there in Trenton. She'd come and visit. She was the only visitor I ever had. But she'd come, they'd come, they'd call, and especially Aunt Vaughn, you keep that baby and come and live with me, which is what I really wanted to do. And right behind that, my mother would call and say, no, if you keep that baby, do not come home. It's like, God, you guys are driving me crazy. I don't know, I know that's probably what I should do. It might be easier, but I had no clue how hard it would be. No clue. Aunt Vaughn might have. She worked in an orphanage for years, but she was also never been married, never had children. I was like a granddaughter to her, so she was great with kids. She loved kids, so it makes sense she would want that. And I don't think she realized that she was pulling on me. They were pulling and tugging. Mom did, but I don't know if she did. But that was the toughest, very emotional time for me, very hard time for me. And, Mom would be very stern. You're not coming back here if you keep that baby. I don't recall ever having a subject come up about aid or ways to, I don't even know if it was something that they did or had way back then. I mean, it was such a different time. Nowadays there is aid everywhere, and most everybody's aware of it and how to get it. And so, but I don't recall them ever mentioning it. Maybe to my parents they did. Florence Crittenden Home had no classes. The only thing that we had was other girls' reports. And so when they would have their baby, they would come back to the home. There was one recovery room, but after a couple days, we were allowed to come down and not really socialize, but I think we ate with the girls. Somehow the girls that had not had babies yet were able to get bits and pieces. The day I had him, I remember waking up that morning and I was having contractions. And I went down the stairs and told the house mother, so we started timing them. We had no classes. There was nothing. I had no clue. It felt like, and I don't know if this is the case, that the room was in the basement. I mean, it seemed like a concrete cement room, no windows. Bed in the middle, nothing else. And they put me in it and that was it, goodbye. And I walked out of the room. Now, I do remember them coming in and breaking my water. I can remember going into the delivery room and them strapping me down and putting the gas mask on my face, which I'm claustrophobic, so that was really horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. Maybe they were giving me something, that little twilight sleep they called it back then. They may have been doing that, so why my memory's a little foggy about it. If they did, I don't know that for a fact, but it is foggy on that part of it. I only remember bits and pieces of the delivery. The next thing I remember is just hearing the baby cry. Didn't see him, but the doctor just says, I said, what was it? And he said, a boy. And I'm like, oh, that's gonna kill my dad, because he always wanted boys. But I had already made up my mind that I was going to see him. I was not signing a paper until I did. And they didn't like that. That was not part of the plan. But that's what I insisted on, because I was 18, so I had to sign. I didn't sign till the day before I left Trenton. So after I got to my room, they tried to match us up with someone else from the home if there was one in there. And there was a girl in there, so that I knew, of course. So I can remember I don't think they brought the baby that rest of that night, but the next day they brought him. And we both had our babies in there, and we unwrapped them and compared notes. And he was 8'13", he was a good-sized baby. So I remember Aunt Mary came, of course. to visit, and she got to see him in the nursery window. Not, of course, back then they took him away when you got a visitor. I wandered out and got on the payphone and called my parents to tell them it was over. And I really kind of wanted to tell them it was a boy and rub it in just a little. Because at that point I had some animosity coming. And they were eating dinner. Must have been the next night. And Dad started crying. And it was a very quick conversation. It was just, okay. You know, and I said, it was a boy, 8:13, this is the time. Okay. And that was all it was. He didn't talk to me, but Mom repeated it to him. And I did name him when they gave you the option, and we knew that the adoptive parents probably would change the name, that sometimes they would use the first name you used as a middle name for them. So they said that might be an important name, you know, if you want to do that. But so yes, I did name him. I named him Michael. Oh, I love my son from day one. I mean, you know, like I said, it was similar. It was all new. It was like, you know, so new and remarkable and wondrous, you know, just like any pregnancy is. It wasn't any different in that respect at all, as far as I was concerned. As far as his adopters were concerned, it was very secret. I had no idea where he went, you know, or anything. Anyway, I was in the home for 3 weeks, 2 weeks after that. Dad wouldn't come up. They put me on a train, come back to DC. And like I said, I signed the papers the day before I left, but I didn't get to see him any of that time because I was at the maternity home and he was somewhere else. He may have been at a foster home. I don't know where he was. They did ask me, did I want a picture? And I said yes, so they gave me a picture. Sent me one, mailed it to me. I can remember my mom being, what is that, what is that, what is that? It's a picture of the baby. And she kind of sat back. I said, do you want to see it? And she said yes, so she did see it. Dad didn't want to see it. But, and all that really hurt me a little, you know. I was like, hey, this is your grandchild no matter what you made me do. And I guess they really didn't make me. I did it, but I still feel like I was forced to do it by them. Yeah, my dad being like I said earlier, being the scholarly type and very proud of me being in college, and he was expecting me to start right back up where I left off. I had a bad mindset the last semester until my grades were really in the tank. You know, I probably didn't go to any classes. I just didn't bother because I didn't see the point. I was leaving. So I didn't, and he never was happy with that. I didn't go back, but I did get a job downtown with the government, and he was government, you know, we were in a carpool together, but yeah, that was expected that I had forgotten. I really think they believed I had forgotten. We never talked about it. We never discussed it. It was just kind of pushed to the side, and I never brought it up much. Number one, because they wouldn't converse with me about it, and number two, it was so raw, I would probably start crying, and I really didn't want to show that part. I wanted to be mad, and so I was. Probably I've been married 4 times, so it probably has affected my relationships. I mean, the first one I know was just, let's get me out of this house, get me away from these people, and let me have another baby to replace the one I lost. That was kind of where your mindset is. You know, I never was able to replace him because well, you can't do that anyway, but I didn't have any boys. I had 2 daughters. But they knew from day one that they had an older brother. And like I said, I didn't have any pictures other than the one, but when you got all 3 of their birth pictures out, they all look alike. It's like, look, you guys all look the same. You know, and yeah, that was the first marriage. And then I got married just 6 years later, and that was a disaster, and had another daughter with him, and then the next one was with a younger guy. And then I met the husband that I have now, who has been my rock, and he's, you know, I've been with him over 20 years now. So I was able to work it out, whatever it was, but I had trouble with that kind of relationships, no doubt. When I got pregnant the second time, and even the third, no, I don't recall it bringing up any bad memories. If anything, I mean, it reminded me of how it was. But there's always that first time, though. That whole thing was special. It was very special, just being pregnant for the first time, just knowing what it felt like. The second time, I knew what to expect, and it was after the fact that I didn't know what to expect. But each are 5 years apart, each one of my kids, which is kind of odd. And the medical field was different. Like with him, I had gas. With my older daughter, it seems like they ended up giving me gas for her too. But this last one, I had an epidural. It's just all changed, and so the birth experience changed. And I would never recommend the gas particularly for anybody, just because you don't get to experience. I mean, I don't think you ought to experience the pain, but you don't get to experience it happening, And being pregnant the first time, it wouldn't matter to me whether it was in that circumstance or not. It didn't matter the circumstances. It was just being pregnant the first time. Very special. But on his birthday, I was a basket case every year. Literally a basket case. And that never did stop until I found him. They told me I couldn't search until he was 21. Could not do that. So I didn't. And when he turned 21, I had computer access, but not like we do now. And I started searching. It's a long, long process. It's very hard. It's a little easier now than it was, but they were just starting. It was just beginning to become popular to do that. And the state registries were just starting up. And being a guy, I wasn't 100% sure how much he would be wanting to do that. It seemed like more like a feminine thing than for him. But he was looking too, but he'd only started looking because they were going to get ready and have children, and he wanted to make sure. This is what he told me and what he told himself. I have a feeling it was not quite all of it, but that he was going to want to find out if there was any medical issues that they needed to be aware of. Well, that's important, but I don't believe that was all that he wanted to find out. But that was his excuse in case I didn't want to take it any further, because that was the question he asked me when I found him was, "Did your family know that you were pregnant? Did your family know you had a baby?" Oh yeah. Everybody I know knew I had a child. Well, he was 26, like 2 weeks shy of 27. So it was about 6 years search, and every place I found that I could plug in, and all I knew was where and when. That's all I knew. And that I had named him Michael, and his date of birth. So I had so many girls that would email me with that date of birth. It's like, nah, I might know your mother, but I'd know. The only one who had a baby that day was me. Yeah, you plug in the date of birth and they would send you a list of who matched to that, and you go through this list. And then one day, it was the Friday before Memorial Day. I was at work fooling around on the computer, not busy, because it's going to have a holiday on Monday, and I don't remember how it popped up, but I put the date of birth in. It was a website I'd not been to before. And what came back to me was an email that said, "Searching for my mother. I was born on this day. I believe my name was Michael. She was a sophomore, maybe at Trenton State," and he had a big question mark after that. And I mean a freshman, and I was a freshman, but nowhere near there. But he didn't know any of this. He didn't have it. They had information, but he didn't have it. His parents did, it turned out. But so they matched pretty much. So I emailed him, and I didn't hear anything, and I didn't hear anything. And Sunday, I didn't have a computer at home. We went to the library and looked at their computer, nothing. Monday was a holiday, library wasn't open, and I finally got a response on Friday. But something about, sounds like we might be a match here. I'd given him my phone number and my email to him. I said, here's my phone number. When you have a chance and you want to, give me a call. And he came back with, does your family know about this? Is there a special time? I said, of course my family knows about this. You know, everybody's known about this for your whole life. You know, it's not a secret. You're not a secret. Your picture's on the mantle with my other daughters. You are always talked about. And so he called that night. We talked for like 4 hours. So it was, yeah, that was amazing. And at the time I was talking to him, his wife was in the other room digging out pictures so she could send them to me of him as a baby and him growing up. And so I got a big picture over my bed with all 3 of the kids growing up pictures in a collage-like thing. So yeah, that was very special. That was one of the ways we identified each other when we called, was the fact that he had a picture that he found at his parents' house and I had a picture. And on the back it said Michael S. and my last name began with S. So of course I knew it was him, but when he said that, and we both have it, and they both are written on the back 17 days, and they're Polaroids, I guess, but the same picture, he figured out that's gotta be me. Well, it took me 6 years, it was a while. I'll never forget the day that I found him. I walked outside, I was like, my girlfriend said, what's wrong with you? You look funny. I said, I just found him. I'm shaking, you know, I was shaking like a leaf. I said, I just found him. Can't wait to go home and get that phone call tonight, because I still hadn't talked to him, but I knew. I knew it was him. I found him in May, so it wasn't until July that I got to get up there and see them. So I flew up, and everybody on the plane knew what I was doing, knew who I was meeting, because I told them all. So, and I was in the back of the plane, so when it landed, they all stepped back and let me come off first so then they could walk out and see us. And they were all standing there. In the pictures, you can see them standing, all the people on the plane standing there watching him hug me. So it was special. He cried. I didn't, but he cried. And the really neat thing was, I forgot about this. The night before, he called me to see if I was nervous and, you know, how I was doing. And at that time, I was making a t-shirt to wear that said Aaron's mom on it. And I did not tell him about that. I wanted to surprise him, but he showed up wearing a t-shirt himself that said Linda's boy or Linda's son. And I was just so thrilled. It was just weird, because we do things like that the same a lot. And that was just really kind of neat that we both were doing the shirts and didn't even know the other one was. When I met him, it did fill a hole, but at that point when I met him, we had already had several conversations. So we had answered a lot of questions. I just needed to get my hands on him. And that first day, I mean, literally, I could not get away from him. I was beside him, hugging him every time. I mean, and some of it he initiated, which I really liked, because that let me know that he also wanted, it wasn't just me wanting to hug on him, he was needing it too. And I mean, I was a secret. When he showed me where he grew up, I had to lay down in the car seat so his parents wouldn't see me, because they always told him if he ever searched for me, they would consider it abandonment. I'm like, you're 21. What difference does it make? What are you going to do? You know, it's ridiculous. A lot of parents felt that way at the time. So he was afraid. I mean, what are they going to do? But yet he took me out to watch his play that he was doing that night. And I met all the cast, and there had to be people in the audience that maybe knew his parents. You know, it just seemed, he did and he didn't. He was afraid to let them meet me or let them know that he found me because of the way they reacted, very similar to maybe the way mine did. But he still wanted to make that connection with me. But, you know, I wouldn't have meant them any harm at all. I was curious, but no, I never got to meet them. You know, he told me when they passed, and I sent flowers. You know, just because. And you don't have to do that. I said, no, I don't have to, but they raised you. You know, it did an okay job. They were the last people I told when I found him. The last. on purpose. So, I mean, it was almost a year after I found them when I told them, because I just made them wait. It was hard because I wanted to say something. I went to New Jersey about 3 or 4 times to see them, and then they got pregnant. They announced that at the anniversary party, was that I was going to be a grandmother for the first time, and my mother was going to be a great-grandmother for the first time. We've got a video of her reaction, and she's just like, you know, all thrilled, and hugged them and everything. But at that particular time, everything was, they'd forgotten all about it all. I'm still over there seething a little bit, but it was all okay. It was all okay. And they even went up to visit once and see the grandbaby and great-grandbaby, and went up to visit him rather than have him come. Well, he came to their house a couple times, but they actually went up there, which is, yeah. I'm like, really? Really? Okay. But he was just so astonished at our family and how much he resembled us when he first met the rest of the family. It was at a anniversary party weekend for my parents' 50th wedding anniversary, and he and his wife came down. And that's the first time he met them and my other 2 daughters and Aunt Vaughn and Aunt Mary. Everybody was there. And he just at one point stopped and he looked around and he goes, I've never been in a room with so many people that look like me. I said, yeah, and they act like you too. You'd be surprised. It's amazing what is nature and not nurture, how much of it is. I would have thought the other way, but it's really not. I was depressed for sure. I don't know about PTSD so much, but it was it was horrible. You know, it was just horrible. And I was able to handle it so much better finding the groups online that, you know, the birth mothers that I was talking with that were having the same issues. It was amazing, and it helped tremendously knowing there's somebody else out there that knows exactly what you're talking about. The one group that I was the most active in, we used to get together once a year and have a retreat. And that was fun, meeting them. I mean, you know somebody from the internet, but then you're spending a whole weekend with them, telling stories, showing my video. My video was my prized possession, and it just kills me that I can't find it, of when I arrived at the airport the day he met me, because he's standing there with balloons and flowers, and his wife was taking a video of what he's doing, and he's pacing and everything, waiting for me. It was kind of nice to see that version. Usually you saw the mothers all nervous going to get to meet him, but I got to see his part, and it's like, oh, this is good. So they all love seeing that because they could maybe put that with their scenario, you know, and most of the birth mothers at that time had found their children. Never did seek therapy. I probably would have benefited from it. I don't know that I wouldn't still, but back then it wasn't that big of a deal to do things like that. I can't recall, you know, it even coming up. I believe that when I went back for our 6-week checkup, it was offered, and I said no, I'm okay, but deep down I probably could have used it. There's no doubt. I think everybody could. That's a very traumatic experience. So, you know, I know my parents didn't look at it that way, but I did, and that's the way it felt, and that's what it was. And it still feels that way, except that it's over now. You know, that's the only redeeming thing right now, is it's over. Well, my 2 youngest grandchildren were taken by DCF from their mother, which is my youngest daughter, and brought to me 3 times. And I'm guardian at this point in time. Then we'll go the adoption route, because they've asked me, did I want to do that? And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of odd when you think about the past, and it's like, but it's the right thing to do, you know, and I don't really have much of a choice. I guess I could have let them go to a foster home, but there's no way I was going to do that. I mean, I've already done that once. I'm not doing it again, and that's the way I feel about that. I've never been a proponent of it at all, and it makes it kind of odd for me now adopting my grandchildren and also wanting to move and not let the birth mother have access. But that's for their safety. I'm on two different groups with them. One it's called the addict's mom. So it's one, the grandparents have the kids and the children are addicts, or one of them is, or they died from it or something. The other one is just grandparents raising grandchildren. And it's just horrifying, the number of people that are having to do that. And I say having to do that because you really have no choice. I mean, you do, but it's not a good one. So, you know, I hear we were retired and disabled and got our little townhouse, and we're all ready to sit back and put our feet up and watch TV for 20 more years. And boom, they bring a 3-year-old in there, boy, who likes to slide down the steps face first. You know, he's just unbelievably active, and it's way out of our range a lot of times. My older daughter will take the older boy, and they go places. She's got them both. She put them both in. The little one's in soccer. The big one's going to play football again, and he drives us crazy. I guess because he's a boy. I don't know. I didn't raise any boys, so I don't know, you know. I know there was one thing I always wanted, and that was just to have him call me mom. He hugged me once and whispered it in my ear, you know, I love you, mom, stuff like that. But he doesn't, as a natural thing, call me mom. He calls me Linda. But I get Mother's Day cards that say, have your Mother's Day, mom. So that's good enough for me.